All right, so officially again, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining Corporate College's webinar series, Live with the Experts, where we bring you the information and tools, topics, everything you need to set you up for success. We're all adjusting and changing. Seems like on a daily basis. Those two words really describes our world right now. We're all shifting to this new reality of remote working, learning, living. Um, and here, our team at Tri-C is really committed to serving you during this time of rapid change. We do this by providing actionable learnings to help you and your team succeed and thrive no matter what your world looks like right now. Our webinar series is only one of Corporate College's resources to prepare you to overcome challenges and achieve both personal and business success. In our series, you'll notice we have 4 different themes, with today's session focusing on navigating a transition. But our other topics focus on virtual leadership, how to work remotely more effectively, and personal health and well-being. And as many of you know, Corporate College is really fortunate to have such a distinguished and talented team of facilitators and subject matter experts. And this morning, I'm so pleased to actually reintroduce to you our presenter and facilitation specialist, Claudia Motu. Claudia began her career as a recruiter at the Omni International Hotel and has been employed at Cuyahoga Community College for almost 20 years in human resources and career services, and now serves as the Director of Employer Outreach at our Career Center. Claudia has screened thousands of resumes and conducted hundreds of interviews in her role as a recruiter in 2 different industries. In her current role, she connects employers with students and people in the community for career opportunities. She loves organizing and has hundreds and hundreds of area and space ideas and efficiencies. And really, she helps specialize people really in the performance of themselves. So we really appreciate her taking the time to be with us again this morning. So with that, I'm very, very pleased to welcome back Claudia Motu. Good morning, Claudia. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. Nice to be with you this morning.
Yeah, it's wonderful to
I
have you back.
thank you. It's better being outside, right?
Right, right.
Just
It's going to
kidding.
be a hot one.
It's going to be a hot one. So, welcome everyone. I wish I could see everyone's faces and reactions as we cover some things, but I do like this modality because I am confident that you'll be able to get some value out of it. And I'm thrilled to be with you to cover this topic. So I know that very few people enjoy interviewing, and for many, it's nerve wracking. It's also nerve wracking for me, even though, as Geraldine mentioned, I've worked in the HR field in 3 different industries. I worked in industrial distribution, and then I was a recruiter in the hospitality industry, and then I was a recruiter here at Tri-C for many years. And so, even though when I'm in the recruiter mode, I'm fine. When I'm an interviewee, I also had challenges in the past. So a lot of these tips are for you and also for me as well. So I want to share some tips to help ease your angst with interviewing. How many of you are presently job searching? If you want to put in the chat, I definitely want to keep you engaged. So, I'll be asking quite a few questions throughout, and Geraldine will be as well to keep you engaged in the conversation this morning.
Well,
Um,
you already have a question, Claudia,
oh, okay.
pop
Hold
in,
on one
so
second. I probably don't see it. I
that's okay.
see.
I can read
Okay,
it
hold on
real
one second.
quick
Sure.
as you're opening it up. But yeah, so we have a number of people on the line who are currently job searching. But one gal specifically asked, if you could address any tips or advice when asking questions pertaining to salary expectations.
Salary. Okay, let me write
Always
that
a
down so
touchy
I don't.
question, huh?
Yes, it is. Okay, so I will And I promise I will leave plenty of time at the end for questions. I purposely did not prepare enough content to cover the whole hour because I wanted to be able to answer many questions. So just to reiterate, the purpose of today's session in particular is to help you understand principles. If you understand the principle behind something, you can apply it more readily to various types of interviews, to help you understand the mindset. And again, today's topic is top interviewing tips from an HR perspective. And that way, if you know that perspective, I think it will definitely help you better prepare for an interview and help you to be successful in that interview and obtaining that position. So that's definitely, I think, a value to have that perspective. And I definitely want you to be successful. You don't have to know every question that will be on the interview, but again, with these tips, you should be able to have a better understanding of, the purpose of the interview and how to succeed in the interview. So let's start with a question. Did you know that, well, let me put a question out in the chat. How long do you think it takes a recruiter or whoever is conducting the interview? It could be a manager, it could be a recruiter from HR, it could be whoever's conducting the interview. How long do you think it takes them to really assess whether they're going to continue to consider someone for the position? We could have some responses. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing the responses. Hold on a second. I need to change it probably to host. A couple of minutes from 1 minute. Okay. First 5 minutes. Yes. So it's between 1 minute and the first 5 minutes. Correct. It is 90 seconds that it takes for the hiring, let's not call them the hiring authority, to make that decision regarding whether they're going to continue to consider someone for a position. So you have to come out of the gate, strong, right from the get-go. And we won't talk about, appearance and dressing for the interview today, but that's also a factor. So since you have to be ready for the get-go, let's start with these tips. Okay, tip number 1. Don't get too casual with the interviewer. Again, whoever that may be, someone from HR, the department manager, somebody else higher up. And the reason I say that is because when I would conduct interviews, it's great to build rapport. You definitely want to build rapport. If the interviewer walks you from the lobby to the interviewing room, and they make conversation, how's the weather, or did you have a difficult time finding us? Just little conversation starters. You definitely want to engage in conversation. You want to build rapport. That's part of, believe it or not, their assessment of you, because they want to see if you have conversational skills. They want to see, how stiff you are, so to speak. They want to see, especially if it's a customer service position or call center position, anything like that, they want to see that you can build that rapport. So that's actually part of the interview, but you just don't want to take it too far and go to the point of oversharing, talking about too many personal things. Again, keep it professional. Don't get too casual. Even in the interview, you don't have to bring up personal things. This is all supposed to be job related. So I wanted to make sure I covered that tip as one of the first ones. And if you have questions about some of these, go ahead and put them in the chat. Okay, then another tip, very important. Again, this is from my perspective, having been in HR, and a little disclaimer, this is my experience as a recruiter. So it doesn't mean, that other recruiters wouldn't have other tips, but this is what I found to be some of the challenges with candidates in the past. So do not ramble. And the reason for that is when someone is asking you a question in an interview, try to have a formula in mind so that you can answer the question. And a formula such as if they say, tell me about your experience with Excel, let's say. You just want to say, well, first of all, again, have a little formula like 1, 2, 3. That's a little formula. First of all, I learned Excel in college, and now I use it on a daily basis, and I'm very proficient with it. So a quick like 1, 2, 3, so that you're not just, going on and on a kind of stream of consciousness, let's say. So sometimes the interviewers may associate rambling with someone who may be disorganized, and you don't want to give that impression. So you want to give the impression that you're organized in your thought, in your speech, and then they may associate that with your work as well. And also, interviews are on a tight schedule. They may have 3 to 4 interviews back to back, and they have a set time, let's say 45 minutes for an interview, 15 minutes just in between interviews, and then back to back interviews. So you don't want to go on and on a particular question, because that may put them behind schedule, and they may not be able to ask all the questions that they want, and therefore they may not be able to assess you on a particular skill or experience, something they wanted to find out, if they run out of time. So I definitely wanted to, provide that little tip as well. And by the way, we're starting out with tips, and then I'm going to go into some specific interview questions, and then allow for additional questions for you at the end. So that's kind of the structure for today's session, if I did not mention that. Another thing is, do not make your answers all about you. Now, of course, we want a position that's going to be in alignment with where we want to work, with the nature of what we want to do, the scope and responsibility that we enjoy, somewhere close to home, ideally, right? Great benefits, great pay, great coworkers, all those things. And we want it to be ideal for us. However, the mind of the recruiter is that they want to fill a position, they want to fill it so that they don't have to refill it again in 6 months, because it takes a lot of training, it takes a lot of time and effort to orient someone. It takes a lot of time and effort to recruit and post positions and interview. So they're trying to make sure that they can find the best candidate for that position. And of course, for selfish reasons, they're working on behalf of the company. They have the company's interest in mind. And what I mean by that is that they want to make sure that the candidate has the right skills. The less training usually they have to do, the better. So anything that you can do to point out what skills you have that are related to that position, the better. Anything that you can point out that you can hit the ground running, so to speak, the better. So again, think of it from a recruiter standpoint. I want to fill this position. I don't want to have to start over in 6 months. I want to make sure that this is the right candidate. I want to make sure that this person can fit into the culture. I want to make sure this person can fit in with the rest of the team. I want to make sure that this person can contribute to the company. They believe in what we're doing. So that's, again, when I mentioned early on about the principle, if you know these principles, then your responses and your approach to the interview will change. I think you'll be better prepared for interviews once you understand that mindset. Does that make sense? Of course, always relay a little bit to show that you researched the company. That goes without saying. And some of these tips, by the way, are not the most common tips that you would see elsewhere. I did that on purpose because I know the same tips are given, in various places online, for example. So I wanted to go a little bit off the beaten path in terms of the tips that I'm providing. Okay, so tip number 4. Complete the employment application. Now, I know nobody likes to complete the employment application. I don't like to complete the employment application. And usually candidates wonder, well, I submitted a resume. Why do I have to fill out the application? It seems redundant. The same information on the resume is on the application for the most part, right? However, again, from an HR perspective, the employment application is considered a legal document. It's a document that you sign. A resume you do not sign. A resume is created by you in the format that you prefer. And an application has specific fields on there and specific questions that are on there for legal purposes. Then when you sign that document, usually there's a statement at the bottom that says that I certify or verify or I attest that the above information is true to the best of my knowledge. So you're certifying that those dates that you put on there are true and accurate. You're certifying that questions regarding background check and criminal records and things like that, that those are true and accurate. So you're signing that. And then if someone ends up falsifying that information on the application, then it becomes a problem. But that's the whole reason for the employment application, really, that it's a legal document. Anyone have a question on applications or anything like that? Yeah, I definitely know it's a pain, especially when it's not a fill-in form and it's something that there's only this much room for you to write something on. And but it's definitely necessary. Okay, moving on. Should I use words from the job description? I see that question coming through. On the employment application, you can use words from the job if it's accurate. So if in the job description for the position that you're applying for, it says proficient with PowerPoint or something like that, and then you put that as a skill that you have on the application, if it's accurate, definitely. But if it's not accurate, you don't want to trip yourself up and say that you're proficient with something if you're not. So great question. All right. On the application, if a field is not required, if it's not, oh, that's a good one. If a field is not required, especially if it's online, correct? I'm assuming. Do you advise skipping it or filling it in? Well, if it's not required, the company has made the decision that it's optional, right? So I guess it all depends what it is. If it's something like of a sensitive nature and you're not comfortable filling it at that time, maybe you'd rather disclose later, again, the salary, for example, or things like that, like more sensitive, you'd rather get yourself past the first point of maybe having that first interview before you discuss certain things, then that's okay. But without knowing like specifically what it would be hard to say. I would kind of play that one by ear. Thank you for the questions, by the way. All right, tip number 5, do not assume your resume has been thoroughly read. Okay, I've made this mistake a gazillion times. I put so much time and effort into preparing the resume, making sure it had all the skills, all my previous positions, et cetera. And then I walked into interviews and I was too short in my answers because I thought, well, they saw my resume. So I felt like I didn't want to restate something that was already in written form on the resume, but don't make that mistake. I made that mistake many times. Sometimes it may be someone in an administrative position that screens the resume for a supervisor, and then they just hand over 2 or 3 resumes to the supervisor, let's say after the pool of applicants has been narrowed down. Or maybe it's a recruiter that's screening the resumes thoroughly and then passing along the resumes to a hiring manager. And the hiring manager perhaps barely looks at it, right before the interview, or, is running from meeting to meeting and he gets the resume and then goes into the interview. So don't assume that your resume has been thoroughly reviewed. Just in the interview, go ahead and overstate rather than understate something. Again, I made the mistake quite a few times where I was too short with my answers, and I should have been more, more comprehensive, more elaborate. Anyone else made that mistake in the past? All right, number 6. Yes, I see. Is that you, Geraldine? You made that mistake? Okay. So tip number 6, remember that interviews can be in different formats. Well, especially nowadays, as Geraldine, we're all adjusting, we're all adapting. So when someone is called for an interview, you're not quite sure. Well, will it be in person? Will it be online? Will it be, if it's online, which system are we using? Are we using Cisco WebEx? Are we using Zoom? And then you have to download, certain software or apps if you don't have those already. Are we using Skype? Are we using something else? There's so many to choose from. So the reason I bring this up is basically, you don't want to assume the format and then you walk in, if you're physically going somewhere, and you're surprised by what format it is. And again, I say that from experience. Before working at Tri-C, I was not familiar with panel interviews at all. So when they called me for an interview at Tri-C, I walked into the room. I don't think they mentioned it was a panel interview, and I was shocked because I was expecting to look, at one person and be interviewed by one person. And then it's a different dynamic when it's a panel interview and, you're facing one person and then another one asks questions and another one asks questions. And, you even in your responses, you might want to look at the first person, then kind of go back and forth between the individuals you're looking at. So it's a different dynamic that you should be prepared for. So my point is, always ask, what is the format? What is, the platform you're using if it's a video conference interview, so you can prepare for that. There's various ways that companies conduct interviews and the way they approach interviews. First interview and then a second interview later, or one-on-one interview on the same day, back to back with other interviews, and you just want to be prepared for the different formats. Anyone else has been surprised when they walked into the interview? Any challenges with that in the past? So again, feel free to ask any questions as we go through the session. All right, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty of some of the questions that you may be asked. Which questions stump you? And if I don't cover them initially, I will try to circle back around to which questions stump you. Go ahead and put those in the chat, and definitely you want to prepare for the tough questions. Okay, I'll wait for some of those to come in. And let's start with the age-old, tell me about yourself, right? This is a difficult question because you can go down a rabbit hole of just, providing too much information, and you get stuck and you just keep going and going and going and don't know how to come back up. It's difficult for many people because they don't know where to begin. How do I answer this question? Have a formula in mind for this question so that you can stay on track. So my typical format and formula is like the 1, 2, 3 method, kind of. So I'm going to say a little bit about my past, then move on to the present, and then the future. So the formula is past, present, future, and that's what works for me. So if they say, they start the interview, they usually start with this question because this is, an opening kind of question before they go in specifically to something about the position. So tell me about yourself. Well, so this is my, my formula. Well, I graduated with such and such. I've worked in the field of HR in different industries up until now. Presently, I am, et cetera, director of employer outreach in the Career Center, and I assist students and employers to connect, et cetera, et cetera. and my goal is to whatever. So that, again, that's just a little formula. So you have a place to start without going too far back and without, really getting stuck on this question. And I see some questions coming in. I will circle back around to those in a second. All right. The other question, why should I hire you, right? And I used to take that question literally, even though I would ask the question as a recruiter, why should I hire you? So you don't have to, and I would respond, well, you should hire me because way too literal. Basically, what they're asking is, just give me a little summary. Why are you the best candidate? And always remember that you're interviewing, but somebody else is interviewing before you or after you or whatnot. So you want to stand out against by comparison to somebody else. So this is your opportunity. Just give a quick summary. Well, I'm familiar with this type of position. I've worked in this industry before. I really like the nature of your company. This position fits in line with what I'd like to do, with what I'm looking for. I'm familiar with the core duties of this job. I would have a short learning curve. I can hit the ground running. So just 2 or 3 things like that are just quick little summaries of why, what are your assets, so to speak, or benefits of hiring you versus somebody else, because the other person may not have any experience, that's related. They may not have certain proficient computer skills. So this is your opportunity to just give a little synopsis of why you're the best candidate. Okay, so hold on a second. Hold on. Let me go back to the question. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? I see that question coming through. That's also a difficult one. It's difficult because basically, if you are ambitious, you want to show that you're ambitious, that you are interested in advancing with the company, if there are opportunities to advance with the company. Sometimes employers ask this question because they want to know if you want to, basically, sometimes they ask if so that they can tell if you are interested, in leaving the company, or if you're a person that can be dedicated to the company. So that's kind of one of the reasons behind it. But it's also an opportunity for you to show that you want a position where you can grow, that, you may not have a specific, job title in mind, but you definitely want to have a challenging position, and that you see yourself staying with the company, if that's the case, to be able to contribute to the company. So something along those lines. I mean, not exactly that way, but you can rephrase it. Okay, so we covered this one. All right. Another question is, why do you want to leave your current position? And this is, a tricky one, right? You definitely want to stay away from any negatives. If you're leaving because of conflict, if you're leaving not on the best terms, you definitely want to, stay away from any of those types of responses. You do want to focus on the direction that you wish to go in. So, let's say you have been somewhere, 10 years or so, and you are looking for another opportunity. You just want a new challenge. It's okay to say that. It's okay to say, well, I saw this position available and it just, really intrigued me. So just focus, instead of the past, focus on the direction that you want to go in. And that's kind of how you redirect the question. Be honest, of course. I would never ever emphasize or advise anyone to falsify or give any information that is not accurate and true. However, if it is positioned that maybe you waited for this position to come up, or again, you may have been somewhere where it's like, I'm ready for the next opportunity. I'm ready for a new challenge. I'm ready, you know, to stretch my skills a little bit and things like that. And maybe you've applied internally where you are now, and the opportunity is just not there, or maybe it's a smaller company and there's no room for advancement and things like that. So you are exploring other opportunities. One other question is, what if you were laid off? So perhaps if you can clarify, and if you were laid off and, oh, okay, if you were laid off and that's why you're leaving your current position. Okay. I mean, you definitely can indicate that there were budget cuts if that's the case at your company. You know, especially right now, that's obviously going to be the case for many individuals. It's going to be the case for many companies. There's no negative, you know, stigma around that. So I think most employers right now would understand that. And what we're seeing is that the employers and the companies that are able to meet the needs of our lifestyle right now, our lifestyle being, you know, basically homebodies, right? And anything that can support that, can any employers and companies that can support providing services and goods and services for our essential needs, those are the ones that are rising to the top right now. The companies that are offering work from home, the companies that are offering the things that we need to live in this, you know, this way of life. And so the companies that are able to shift in that direction and be valuable during this time, those are the ones where the positions are. And you know, if you were laid off, there's, you know, that's nothing that you're saying that's a negative about the company or about your job. But you can say, you know, there were budget cuts, there were you know, some difficult decisions that the company had to make. So yeah, that's okay to say that. How can you, I see another question. How can you explain being part of a company downsizing without it putting you in a bad light? Again, I think right now, I don't, if individuals are being laid off, if there's, you know, if companies are downsizing, I think that is something completely understandable by another employer. Many employers are having to make very difficult decisions right now, and I think the ones that are doing well, I'm sure can understand. They hear it in the news, obviously, every day about other companies who are struggling, other companies, you know, who couldn't reopen fully, or who cannot, you know, conduct their business fully as they did previously. So that I definitely don't think is a, you know, is a negative. Okay, hold on. What are your weaknesses? Okay. So this is also one that can trip people up, because you can talk about weaknesses outside of the context of something that's work related, or sometimes individuals or candidates respond outside of the context of that position. So you definitely want to respond with a weakness that is work related. The whole context of the whole interview, by the way, should be in regards to the position you're applying for and in regards to the professional you know, working world. So that's your frame of mind. That's kind of like the box that you're sticking to for the interview. And if you do, not if, but when you do mention a weakness, always mention how you're correcting for it. So for a long time, I also didn't know how to answer this question. But recently, because it's been pointed out to me several times, I realized that my weakness is delegating or lack of delegating. You know, I supervise others, but when we're in a meeting or when a project is assigned or something like that, I have a tendency to, I mean, it just rolls off my tongue. I have a tendency to say, oh, I'll do it, or I'll work on that, or I'll take care of it, or I will, you know, whatever, without realizing that I can delegate certain things. So now, I'm more mindful of doing that and mindful of the fact that I need to delegate so I don't get overwhelmed, so I don't get, overly stressed out when I have other individuals that I could delegate to. So always indicate how you're correcting for that. Okay, I see that a question come. And Geraldine, if you can help me keep track of the questions that I didn't answer, and I'm going to try to go a little faster so I can get to some of the questions there. All right. Oh, so here's the question. I forgot I had want to be in so many years. And I think I already answered it, but if you are ambitious and want a particular job title, a specific title, you can mention it. Or you can focus just in general that you want to grow with the company, you want to continue to learn, you want to continue to develop, build your skill set. And that's more generic, but it still shows ambition, and it shows that you don't want to be stagnant, and it shows that you have a desire to keep growing and building your knowledge and your skill base. But be realistic. I mean, you don't have to say, well, I would like to be vice president of such and such in 5 years. If, your title is coordinator or whatnot. So be realistic. One or two steps up is in 5 years is generally, realistic, but perhaps jumping from a particular level to, 8 steps up may not be that realistic. So hopefully that helps.
Yep. And Claudia, this is Jerry. So there was a previous comment, but I thought this was really, really important, where somebody mentioned that rambling was one of their weaknesses. And she had some really, really great tips for combating that, and using like the 1, 2, 3 method, or the past, present, future method might work well.
Exactly.
I've also seen people, and I've actually gone into interviews with just like a little notebook or a one piece of paper with some notes on it. Do you recommend that, or what's your perspective on that as, as a hiring agent?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fine. It shows that the person is recognizing that they may not be able to, remember everything. Let's say the recruiter or hiring manager mentioned something about the position or about the company, and you're taking notes. That is perfectly fine. Even during the interview, well, I suppose not right in the middle of the interview, but it's definitely okay to, to take notes and have that with you, or have your certain questions already written out, the questions that you want to ask at the end of the interview. So yeah,
Right.
definitely,
Right.
no problem.
Okay, and 2 other really quick questions. A couple people have asked about tip number 7. So let me just repeat that real quickly, because tip 7 was all responses should be in the context of the position. And then Claudia, I know you went into some specific questions, and those all related. I just wanted to help put that into context for all of our participants. So Claudia, you did cover tip 7, but I know we probably didn't stay on that particular slide too long, because then you went into some specific questions, and then as you mentioned, provide the examples and make sure everything is relevant to that particular position you're applying for.
Sorry, I did somehow skip over that one.
That's okay.
Okay.
It was a fast slide.
So again, just frame all your responses and remember the context of the the position that you're applying for. So the reason I brought that up is I was on an interview a long time ago, and they asked for what was my strength, or something like that, and I gave a response that was totally irrelevant to that position. And afterwards, why did I say that? Why didn't I say something that would be related to the position that I was applying for? So again, just keeping that context in mind, that that's really what they want to know about. And if you've had various positions in the past, try to zero in on describing or relaying information about a project, a position, a skill that's related to this job. So you're trying to help that recruiter or hiring manager make that connection between you and the current position, and that fact that there's alignment there. That's basically, the mindset. right, so
And then there was another really, really important question. So I know you probably want to address this now, but how important is it to have final questions at the end of an interview that you're then asking? So, and what are some really impressive questions that you have heard?
well, I
Really
don't
good.
know if they're I don't know if they're impressive, but in the past, I've asked what is the hiring manager looking for in the candidate? And that really tells you a lot. If what skills or what attributes are they looking for in the candidate? Some people ask, why is the position presently available? That'll tell you, somebody just left or it's a newly created position, and that gives you a little bit, of insight. Or if they say someone just retired, then someone has stayed in that position a long time, so it's theoretically a good position. So anything that actually you're really interested in knowing about is a good question, without getting too much into all of the time off questions and things like
Right.
that. So
Those are the real important things you want to know, but maybe not the
yeah,
right time to ask
not the
yet.
right time, later on you can find out about that. So
Perfect.
um
And
but
one last other great question, because
yes.
I think you might address this at the end, but I'm not sure. So I wanted to bring this up. Another gal asked, said, after a panel interview, is it okay to send a thank you note to just the hiring manager, expressing thanks to everybody involved, or should you send individual ones to each person?
If you send it just to the hiring manager, you're hoping that that person shares it with the others. So I guess if you really want to cover your bases, you could send it to all. Or I mean, even emails are fine if you have all the panelists' emails, and just send a thank you, a group thank you email. That would be fine as well. So any of those approaches really, but as long as you send a thank you, that's
Right,
that's the
right.
biggest part.
Yeah. And, I'll just say this and then I'll let you go because I think we're all caught up. But one of the things that I was on a panel interview, but I was one of the interviewers, and I was really impressed with a candidate who at the end was asking questions and then asked each of us for our business card so that they could
Hmm.
respond back to us individually. So I thought that was really great.
Yeah, that's a nice touch, definitely. Right there.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So I skipped that. So apply for positions that align with your strengths. Just be honest about what you thrive on and in. If you're a person that's more creative, you probably don't want to work for a company that's overly structured. You want a company and a position that has more flexibility, that has more leeway, that has more of an approach of creative ways, and solutions to things. If you really like hands-on, work, then find something that is more along those lines. If you thrive on relationship building, find a position where you are interacting with people. You're going to be miserable if you're in an office all by yourself all day and you're a person that thrives on social interaction. So just be honest about what is it um, that really provides job satisfaction for you. And usually it's something in regards to the nature of that position. If you like planning and directing and organizing, which is me, I like all of those things. So just really kind of assess and take a look at what is it that really energizes you. Because if you do something that is not in line with you know your abilities and with your strengths, it's not going to be a good fit. All right. All right. So just a quick summary. Remember the context. It's a formal interview, and all responses should relate to that position. You don't need to study every question. That's also, I would prepare for every single question in the past. Now, I actually write a list of what is it that I want to convey that I think is important for the position. So if a position involves collaborating, I'm just going to write a sheet with that note for myself to make sure I mention something about collaborating or something about customer service or something about what I think is pertinent to that position. And that way I don't have to study every single question and then I get disappointed when they don't ask that question because I prepared for that question. So now it's more of a list of what do I want to make sure I convey that I think is related to the position. So focus more on the concepts, focus on the principles that I mentioned, focus on the mindset of, that person that's interviewing and, trying to understand that mindset. And then everything else should flow from there, I think, more easily than, okay, am I prepared for this specific question? I don't know if that makes sense, but okay. And then hopefully after all that, you are hired. All right. So, did we miss any questions in the chat? I don't even know how much time we have. Any other questions? We
have a few minutes left, Claudia. But yeah, I'm going to scroll back through. There were some questions.
Okay, I
maybe in
see
the
here.
beginning.
Tell me about a time when you had an issue with a coworker and what you did to manage it. Well, so the essence of that question, obviously there's reasons behind the questions. A lot of questions, they're not at face value. So the reason for certain questions is because they want to assess, probably, I would think, your conflict management skills. So you want to show that, well, you don't want to show that you're high conflict. Hopefully you're not. But you want to show that you're able to manage conflict, even, if it's a disagreement or something like that, and how you managed it. Oh, that's a tough one.
Right.
So you probably can say, well, you had a certain approach or you had a certain idea about doing something, and someone else, really wanted to go in a different direction. And well, that one's hard without knowing like what the specifics are.
But I think you're right, Claudia. I mean, I've had people, I've been asked that question. I've had other people pose that question when I've been on interview panels. And I think that, like you're saying, the real goal there is to see how they managed through it. And it's, again, it's almost like, you never want to talk bad about a company. You don't really want to talk bad about a coworker, but you want to show how did you resolve that conflict, or was it resolved? How did you involve other leaders within the organization to help resolve it, or were you able to resolve it independent, just between the two parties? So
absolutely, definitely.
I got another tough question for you.
Yes, I see it.
So how do you explain multiple gaps in employment? Always a tricky question.
Whoops, actually, I was looking at a different question. Okay.
Go ahead.
Multiple gaps in employment.
It happens. I mean, life happens.
Yeah, it happens.
Right?
Definitely, it happens. And people don't stay in the positions for the average amount of time they used to in the past. If it's time off for, caring for children, it is, okay to mention that. If it was, maybe you just accepted a position not knowing that that company was going to cut positions, so you had no way of controlling that. Or if you accepted a position and then you found out it was not the right fit, that's okay too, as long as you're not, again, as long as the way you respond is not negative. It is okay to be honest. I mean, hopefully in your employment history there are instances of a longer period of time that you've been with the company, because the ultimate reason for that question is the employer wants to know, okay, if I spend time hiring you, training you, how long are you going to stay? They have no way of knowing how long a person is going to stay, but they're trying to make an educated guess. If someone has been somewhere 8 months, 6 months, 1 year, then they kind of see a pattern that, and they may think, well, this person is not committed, and they may not stay long. Is it worth our time and energy to, to invest in this person? They want to see a return on their investment. But hopefully you've had some experience in there, which is, can show stability, for example. And if there's one-offs, that is perfectly okay. I mean, people leave a position, go into another position, and then the next week there's a budget cut, and they had no way of knowing that. So, different instances like that. Okay, hold on one second. Oh, hold on one second. Okay, I saw one where it was. Hold on.
Yeah, going back, I see there was one where a person was recently asked to complete an employment application.
Okay, I see that one. So they're asked to complete an employment application interview or initial interview. Found this odd. The employment application and being asked to complete that can be at any point in the process. Different companies approach it differently. So some will work off of your resume initially when you're called for the interview, and then if they're considering you further along, then they'll have you complete the employment application. Other companies, because it's online and they're using an online applicant tracking system, there's so many out there, but one of the first things that you do with many companies is fill out the employment application online, and that's how you're expressing interest in the position with the employment application. And then most likely they're asking you to attach your resume. It's usually a required action step that you attach your resume or attach your cover letter. So it can vary. It's not illegal, to have someone fill out the employment application from the start of the process, but the approach again, can vary. Usually if it's a small company and they don't have an applicant tracking system, they will have you submit your resume or email your resume to so-and-so because they don't have a system. But the bigger companies, most likely they have an applicant tracking system, and you apply online and then attach your resume. So just a little bit different, based on the type of company. Hopefully that answers your question. Hold on one second. Let me see. I'm scrolling through here.
Yeah.
I see though, a hiring manager once told me to remember that I'm interviewing them as well because I also have the opportunity to decide. Exactly. That was a very good perspective, to have, because a lot of times employers in the past, I don't know if it's as much the case anymore, they would call and ask a person, are you available for an interview on Friday, let's say? Very short notice, very little time to prepare, very little consideration of the applicant. And their mindset was, well, if you want this job, then you'll make yourself available for the interview. And it's all about, well, if they want the job here to work for us, they will do whatever, and kind of not really being considerate of the candidate's time to prepare, time to take a day off for an interview, etc. But I think that's a little bit different now, and employers are really, really realizing it's a two-way street. It's definitely, definitely a two-way street.
And Claudia, in response to that, I've had some experience too. I think this is a really great point at the end when you're asking questions to either A, show your expertise by asking some very specific questions that really highlight the expertise that you would need for that particular job, or B, and I've even used this as well, maybe applying for a job that you don't have a tremendous amount of background in, but you have so many skills that really can translate well into that other job. I think asking questions about that really then again highlights your capabilities, your interests, and also your expertise in being able to transition skills from one industry maybe to another.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Show that you have those transferable skills and that you can apply them to the new position. anything regarding, relationship building, regarding being flexible, being creative, being able to problem solve, being a great project manager. Those are all transferable skills to any position. So even though you may not have had the title of such and such, it's not about the title. It's about, what can you do to show that you can perform the duty successfully.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of ties into the next question. Really, really great question. So, Claudia, what specific interviewing tips would you give to someone who is not US born and is now entering the workforce without a lot of US or any US work history?
Okay, well, I don't know how much time we have, but
We got about 5 minutes
5
left.
minutes. Okay.
4 or 5 minutes.
Well, quick story. So I'm not U.S. born. I was born in Romania, and my parents and I immigrated here. And well, when we came over, basically, I think my parents were here like 2 weeks, and then they applied for jobs in factories at the time. There were a lot of factories in Cleveland at the time. And they they did what they could without the English speaking skills. But if language is not a barrier, then that definitely opens up the field of opportunities more than if language is a barrier. So without knowing that part, that's a little difficult to assess. However, job is a job, and if a person is being trained here on whatever the company culture is, that's the same thing that employer would have to do for anyone else, orienting someone on whatever computer platform that a company is using, on the policies and the procedures. So you want to I don't know if it's pointed out, but basically it's that part would be the same of anyone that is US born. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what I would say. I mean, work experience is work experience. Being
Right.
able to deal with various customers, having certain computer skills, having customer service, that's international. And not having that work experience here, I don't think is a detriment. Honestly,
Right.
you just
Right.
have to point that out to the employer in terms of what experience and skills you bring to the table. So don't let that hinder you at all.
Right. And no, great responses, because that's absolutely true. And I've experienced that on both sides of the table, going to different country and applying for a job, and then hiring people that had just just located to the U.S. So here's a couple more questions, Claudia. Really fantastic questions this morning. Everybody's got such interesting
Thanks for
questions.
being engaged, by the way.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. These kind of all tie together. So what if you have a disability? When would you want to be able to disclose that? Because obviously, too, you want to ask some questions to make sure that you can decide if that work environment is going to suit a disability you might have.
Okay, that's a good one. I actually probably have to do a little bit more research on that one and get back to you, because I'm not that familiar as far as when to disclose that.
Okay. So I
Um,
do, just so you know, Claudia, with the messages here in the chat, I can share those with you. So
yes,
the
thank you.
person who asked that question, Claudia can follow up with you by email afterwards.
Thank you.
Yep, because we want to make sure we give you the right answer.
Right, I wouldn't want to answer incorrectly on that one, so I prefer to do a little
Yeah.
bit of research on that one.
Okay, and unfortunately, I think we're getting close to time, so I think this might be the last one. At what point should you dismiss a job you have applied to online if you have not heard back from the employer? Do you see that, is it a couple weeks, month? Because, not knowing what an employer's
Time frame.
application process time frame, yeah.
You know what? I wouldn't dismiss it until you've heard definitively that you were not selected for the position, because the time frame can vary so greatly. Again, if it's a small company and they're hiring and their process moves quickly, you may know, very quickly regarding your status. If it's a bigger company and their process is more elaborate, let's say it's a panel interview, let's say it's, a 2-level process, let's say, it's more in depth, you may not hear, for a couple months, which may seem odd. But again, it all depends on what the hiring process is like for a company, who has to sign off on approvals. Did something happen where they were going to hire and now there's a budget cut and they have to put it on hold? And all those decisions, especially right now, everything is so in flux, as we all know. But until you've heard definitively through either an email or a letter that the employer has sent, or a phone call, that indicates that you were not selected, I definitely would not, dismiss that opportunity. So I know it's nerve-wracking. The waiting is nerve-wracking. Keep applying, keep searching for other opportunities, and you can also follow up to say, I'm just curious, what's my status? Am I still being considered? That's usually, the general way to ask about that.
Right. Perfect, Claudia. And I know we're out of time, but I just wanted to mention this one last question, because I don't know if this is something you want to handle offline as well. But someone was asking that they were asked a question about what their husband's employment was. What does he do for a living? And so was kind of surprised that they were asked that question.
Yeah, that's
So,
surprising. It's definitely not job related. It's
right.
definitely not something that the employer needs to know what they do. It could be one of those fishing for information questions. If they were fishing for, are you married? I really don't know the reasoning behind
I don't know
it.
that
It has
that's an
nothing to do with,
appropriate question.
no, it has nothing to do with the position.
Yeah,
And you could,
it's
I mean,
interesting.
if you want to address it head on, you could say, well, I'm not sure if that's relevant to the position, but,
Yeah.
or you could dodge the question altogether. Yeah, it's not.
Well, Claudia, thank you so very much on behalf of everyone here at Corporate College, on behalf of everybody who's on the webinar today. So many people I know benefited from the information you provided. And honestly, I think it's something not only to keep in mind as you are maybe job searching, maybe looking to transition, you're currently in a job, or maybe you have been displaced right now because of everything happening with COVID. But these are things to remember, I think, once you're actually on the job too,
Mhm.
if you want to advance or during your performance evaluation, these are all the really, really great tips. So thank you so much for being here this morning.
My pleasure. And I wish everyone the most success in your job search and your current endeavors, and in the current job market. I just felt I wanted to offer
Yeah.
something to help right now.
Very, very helpful. I learned a lot today too. I always do. This is great. So, and for those of you too who have joined too, just please remember Corporate College truly is here to serve you with essential learnings to overcome challenges you may be facing right now. And together, you see, with our great subject matter experts and facilitators, our virtual classroom training, even our self-paced online programs, we can really provide you or your organization, consultation services, training, coaching, whatever it is to help you achieve that success. And as I mentioned, Claudia is the director for our Career Center, and our Career Center's mission is really to provide high quality career development services, not to just our students and alumni, but to the community in a learner-centered environment. And we provide, virtual career exploration, assessment tools such as virtual job shadow, career spots, and my plan. And in addition, the Career Center offers a wide range of virtual career-related services and online programming, including workshops and individual coaching appointments, resume critiques, mock interviews, personal assistance. It goes on and on. And again, this is free for students, alumni, and the community. So for more information regarding these services and resources, please visit our career services at tri-c.edu or call the Career Center toll free at 866 933 5180. And I'm also going to put that information right now in the chat for everybody. So again, thank you all for participating today. We hope that you continue to stay in touch with Corporate College and everything that we're doing to support you. Feel free to rewatch Claudia's session in the next couple of days. You'll find it on our free webinar series page. And always, please stay up to date with us by following us on social media. Take care, everyone. Please continue to stay safe and healthy. Thanks again.
Bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.